The wedding ring felt heavier than iron as it slid onto her trembling finger, and in that single moment, the poor young girl realized her life had crossed a line it could never uncross. The hall glittered with crystal lights and soft music, but inside her chest there was only fear, shame, and a quiet, desperate hope that this sacrifice would somehow save her family. She was barely 20, wearing a borrowed white dress, standing beside a 73-year-old millionaire whose name echoed through newspapers and business magazines. People whispered, cameras flashed, and no one asked what it cost her to stand there. What no one knew was that exactly 1 week later, the truth would surface in a way that would shock her to her core and change everything she believed about life, love, and destiny. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected grace. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Her name was Ariba, and she came from a narrow street where the houses leaned into each other like tired old friends. Her father had once been strong, a man who worked with his hands and returned home each evening with dust on his clothes and pride in his eyes. Then sickness arrived quietly, stealing his strength day by day until hospital bills replaced groceries and silence replaced laughter. Her mother stitched clothes late into the night, her fingers cracked and bleeding, while Ariba abandoned her dreams of college to work wherever she could. Still, it was never enough. Debt grew like a shadow that refused to leave, and every knock on the door made her heart race. When the proposal came, it did not arrive wrapped in romance but in numbers and urgency. A marriage arrangement, legal and clean, promised to erase every debt, secure medical treatment for her father, and give her family a home where rain did not leak through the ceiling. The groom, Malik Rahman, was a self-made millionaire known for his age, his vast fortune, and his reclusive nature. People said he was cold, others said he was lonely, and some said he was simply buying companionship at the end of his life. Ariba did not have the luxury of wondering which was true. She saw only her father's labored breathing and her mother's bowed shoulders. She agreed, and in doing so, buried a part of herself she did not know how to mourn. Life after the wedding felt unreal, like stepping into a film set where everything was too polished to touch. The mansion was vast and echoing, filled with paintings she did not understand and hallways that seemed to stretch forever. Servants moved quietly, addressing her with respect that made her uncomfortable. She was given clothes she never would have chosen, meals she barely tasted, and a room larger than her entire childhood home. Malik Rahman himself was courteous but distant, his movements slow, his eyes sharp and observant. There was no cruelty in him, but there was also no warmth, and that absence frightened her more than anger would have. The first week passed in a strange fog. Ariba woke each morning unsure of her place in the world. She felt like a guest who had overstayed her welcome, except this guest wore a wedding ring and carried the weight of a lifetime decision. She missed her family intensely, even as she knew they were finally safe. Her father was receiving treatment, her mother rested for the first time in years, and the debt collectors had vanished. These facts were meant to bring peace, but they only deepened her confusion. She wondered if she had sold her future to buy their present, and whether that trade would ever feel fair. Malik Rahman observed her quietly during those days. He noticed how she flinched at sudden sounds, how she walked softly as if afraid to disturb the air, how she spent long hours in the garden staring at the sky. He noticed, too, her kindness toward the staff, the way she thanked them sincerely, the way she fed the stray cats beyond the gate. Something in her presence seemed to soften the heavy walls of the house, though she herself felt smaller within them. On the seventh day, everything changed. That morning began like the others, with silence and routine, but by evening, Ariba was called into a private study she had never entered before. The room was lined with books and photographs, the air thick with memories. Her heart pounded as she stood there, unsure of what she had done wrong. What she did not know was that this room held the truth of her marriage, a truth Malik Rahman had been preparing to reveal since the moment she walked into his life. What followed shattered every assumption she had made. The marriage, she learned, was never meant to be what the world believed. Malik Rahman had not married her out of desire or loneliness, but out of a carefully planned act of restitution. Years earlier, his company had expanded aggressively, and in doing so, it had destroyed small businesses, displaced families, and quietly ruined lives. One of those lives belonged to Ariba's father, whose workshop had been forced to close after unfair contracts and corporate pressure crushed his income. Malik had not known the faces behind those losses then, but age had given him a conscience that wealth never satisfied. When he learned of Ariba's situation through a private investigator, he saw an opportunity not just to help, but to take responsibility in a way that would restore dignity rather than offer charity. The marriage was a legal shield, a way to transfer wealth, security, and opportunity without public pity or scandal. In 1 week, he planned to make her the sole trustee of a foundation he was forming, sign over properties in her name, and then quietly step back from the role of husband entirely. His health was failing, and he knew his time was limited. He wanted his fortune to mean something beyond numbers on a screen. The truth left Ariba breathless. Shock gave way to anger, then to a deep, aching sadness for a man who had carried regret like a secret illness. She realized that her fear had blinded her to the complexity of the person she had married. Malik Rahman was not a savior, nor a villain, but a human being trying, too late perhaps, to balance the scales of his life. The marriage was never meant to trap her, but to free her in ways she could not yet imagine. In the days that followed, the mansion felt different. The walls no longer pressed in on her, instead, they seemed to listen. Malik involved her in decisions about the foundation, encouraging her education, her voice, her vision. He insisted she return to her studies, travel, and build a future defined not by sacrifice but by choice. For the first time since her father fell ill, Ariba felt the stirring of possibility. She was still healing, still unsure, but hope was no longer a stranger. When Malik Rahman passed away months later, the headlines were loud and speculative, but the truth remained quietly written in legal documents and lived out in changed lives. Ariba stood at his funeral not as a young widow bound by sorrow, but as a steward of something far larger than wealth. The foundation provided healthcare, education, and legal support to families crushed by corporate greed, ensuring that what happened to her family would not happen again to others. Years later, Ariba would walk through the same narrow streets of her childhood, now lined with small businesses thriving under fair contracts and community support. She would see children heading to school with books in their hands instead of fear in their eyes. And in those moments, she understood that the truth that shocked her 1 week after her marriage was not just about money or intention, but about the quiet power of accountability and compassion. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment now to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement tells us that stories of humanity, redemption, and unexpected kindness still matter in this world. Before the ending, we have a special request for you. Comment below with the words "Second chances matter" if you believe that even the most unlikely situations can lead to healing and hope. Ariba's life did not follow the path she once imagined, but it became something deeper and more meaningful than she could have dreamed. From poverty to power, from fear to purpose, her journey reminds us that sometimes the most shocking truths arrive not to destroy us, but to wake us up. And when they do, they ask us a simple question in return: what will we choose to do with the chance we are given?